Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Dick Brody. I am solo today, here to bring you new news from the Chicago Bears mini voluntary training camp that's happening at Hallis Hall this week, along with some pretty big news about a guy that wants out of San Francisco and could come to Chicago. Justin Fields has been leading this team through this voluntary training camp so far this week of April 18th, 2022. Very exciting to see it at Hallis Hall. A lot of players are ending up going, and that should excite you a lot that a lot of people are going to voluntary minicamp, especially some of the players that we're going to talk about today. And the ones that are getting asked questions are given the right answers, at least for now. Chicago Bears have also started to hint at who's going to be their starting offensive line for week one, but obviously this is before the draft, and the Bears do still have a needed offensive line, so there still could be a switch up, but it seems like some of the guys that we've been talking about for a while are getting their shot at the starting position, and that's also something that's a big deal, especially when they're put in the right position, unlike what Matt Nagy was doing for the Chicago Bears last year. And finally, I'm sure you're all here for a lot of the reason, especially because of the thumbnail, is that there's discussion of the likeliness of Deebo Samuel coming to Chicago. Bears fan base is blowing up about it right now, the possibilities, what we can do, what he would do for this team, how it would help. There's a lot going on out there, and I'm here to bring you kind of the reality check of Deebo Samuel coming to the Bears, but there's still a good chance, and I'm all for it if Ryan Poles can get it for the right price. Kind of giving a little hint for you guys there, but stay tuned for that. But what you're here for, folks, also is the mini camp. So let's get into it. A couple things that have come out according to reports is that a lot of big name players for the Chicago Bears community, not along the NFL, but big names that you want to hear at these voluntary training camps have been showing up consistently. There was the workout one a couple weeks ago that was held at Hallis Hall. And then this week is a voluntary training camp where sometimes they're starting to run through some plays. They're starting to get an idea of who's starting and who's going where, rotations, kind of things that you want to start getting moving on sooner than later, instead of walking into training camp and kind of walking around going, where do I go? Bears are starting to do that now, and it's looking good. It's only April, and the draft is a week away, so there's still more players to come to this team, but guys that are here are starting to gel together. Players that have attended the training camp, according to reports so far: Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Roquan Smith, Trevis Gibson, Larry Borum, Tevin Jenkins, Cole Kmet, and many, many more were spotted. Khalil Herbert as well. Just want to put his name out there. But a lot of young guys that, yes, were drafted by Ryan Pace, not Ryan Poles, the guy that apparently a lot of Bears fans are very happy with how he put together this team, but you cannot deny that this team, considering they didn't blow the whole thing up, besides a few major trades, aka Khalil Mack, Bears are doing pretty good. And Ryan Pace did give Ryan Poles a decent group to work with, especially Matt Eberflus is also excited about. But they could blow this thing up after the season. I don't know, folks, but I'm just putting that out there. But let's get back to it. The reason why I call out this young group of guys is because, like I said, it's a young group of guys that are going out there that are starting to get a name for themselves, but also starting to gel together and how they play a massive role in the future building of the Chicago Bears. Good chemistry equals good team equals good locker room. And you can usually, motivate guys and, give guys constructive criticism a lot easier when people like each other. They don't take it so offensively. So that's very big in my eyes, guys. And I think that's something that you all should be excited about, hearing that players are going and buying into Matt Eberflus already. A coach that, a lot of these guys, they've only had one head coach, and that's Matt Nagy, and they're already going to all his voluntary training camps that him and Ryan Poles are putting together. That's pretty exciting. Want to talk about Justin Fields a little bit more in detail here. He has a completely different mindset walking into year two of the Chicago Bears. Why is that? Because he has told reporters, I am ready to lead this offense and this team. That is something that Bears fans have been looking for a long time. The voice of their quarterback coming out, and not the voice of Matt Nagy talking for Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, or any other quarterback that he played during his time. No, Justin Fields is coming out there along with Matt Eberflus, who's kind of standing by the side of him just to back things up. But Justin Fields is taking a stand to reporters and saying, this is my team. I'm ready to lead to success. I'm ready to lead this offense. Fields believes in Getsy. Eberflus believes in Getsy. Everyone believes in each other, and that's a good thing. And, you want that out of a franchise guy, especially a franchise quarterback, something the Bears fans of all generations, at least the last couple generations, unless you were around for the 1985 Bears, which I know a lot of you guys are. I know a lot of our viewers definitely were around for the 85 Bears, and, God bless you. I was around for 2006, but I was 9 years old. So it doesn't really count as much, but that feeling there. But that is something that my generation, at least, has not experienced as a true quarterback. So Fields also told reporters that he is comfortable in this offense. He is comfortable so far with what he's being taught, and he has worked on a lot of techniques that he did in the offseason. And he looked pretty good at minicamp from the few little footage that the Bears have kind of put out. Make sure you go follow the Bears on Twitter or on Facebook. They post a lot of good in-camp footage. Another guy I want to talk about is Trevis Gibson, is supposedly put on a lot of muscle this offseason. Losing Khalil Mack, all you had was Robert Quinn, who Quinn arguably is a very big guy. A lot of NFL players usually are pretty big guys, but Trevis Gibson came into the league a little skinnier, and man, he looks like a completely different player than he is entering year 3. And he had a good year last year. He had the opportunity to speak to reporters about his offseason, and he sounds much more confident and comfortable with this defense from Alan Williams. Kind of like what we heard in Justin Jones. We interviewed Justin Jones last week. If you haven't seen that episode, make sure that you go and watch that. But there's a chance to shine. And that's been kind of the theme coming out of defensive players, is that everyone has a chance to shine. It's not just one player that's going to make that play. Everybody's going to get into it. And that's something that is huge for the Chicago Bears. And then also just the rest of the defense as a whole are claiming that running through this new defensive scheme from new defensive coordinator Alan Williams from the Indianapolis Colts, who is now the Bears, obviously, they feel much more comfortable. You have defensive linemen are saying they have their hand in the dirt more. They're not worrying about dropping back into coverage, being defensive linemen and letting linebackers and safeties and corners worry about that situation. Sure, you might have one guy drop back every now and then, but it's more hands in the dirt, getting dirty, going after the quarterback, creating pressure, because when you create pressure, quarterbacks happen to make mistakes. When you're dropping Khalil Mack, Trevis Gibson, and Robert Quinn back into coverage, who aren't coverage guys and are paid to go after the quarterback, probably not going to have the best results, if we're being honest here. Even though you have more guys in coverage, quarterback doesn't have any pressure, can make plays, can think differently. So happy to see that moving forward. Another note that I want to call out is that Eddie Jackson has been a no-show to this voluntary minicamp so far, but it doesn't sound like he'll be showing up at all, and that is not a cause of concern from Bears head coach Matt Eberflus. I'm going to be honest with you. This makes me mad about Eddie Jackson. I've gone so back and forth with Tony and with you guys about how I feel about Eddie Jackson, and I like Eddie Jackson. I have his autograph hanging up right above my desk because it's one of my favorite pictures of him, and he has been arguably one of my favorite players in the last 5 years. But I'm disappointed with how he is handling being a leader for this team. He showed up to the last voluntary workouts, but also got paid a couple $100,000 to show up to that because I was in his contract. I do the same thing, but at least if I'm making that money, and especially now that he is a leader of this team, now that Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks type players are gone, Gibson has to step up and be a better leader, but also he has to earn back the trust of the fan base, especially after last year with the no tackling comment and then all the blown tackles that happened last year. Eddie Jackson needs to really, in my opinion, if you're listening, Bojack, love you, man, but I would love to see you show up to Hallis Hall tomorrow and kind of prove us all wrong that you are a leader and you are going to take things for yourself. And also Roquan Smith, the leader of the Chicago Bears defense, and arguably one of the leaders of the Chicago Bears besides Justin Fields and a few others, said at the end of the season, he wants to be a Chicago Bear for life. And he said that yesterday and today during reports, is that he is hoping that he can get a contract figured out with the Chicago Bears. But also he said, quote, my goal is to be one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in the league this year, and be the best leader for this team moving forward. Love that energy from the guy that we drafted out of Georgia. Has been great for the Bears over the last couple of years. A lot of you guys know he's been snubbed of Pro Bowls, and we think that this is the year for Roquan Smith. If I'm Ryan Poles, I'm giving him the bag this upcoming season because he is the heart and soul of the defense. Let's go to topic number 2 real fast. Offensive line. It has been spotted multiple times over the last couple of days that Larry Borum has been running with the ones as a left tackle, and Tevin Jenkins is at his original spot from college at right tackle. This makes sense because Larry Borum was a left tackle in college, was drafted as a left tackle, and was thrown everywhere around the field. Might not be the biggest offensive lineman at 6'3", but he's very athletic, good, and Ryan Poles clearly did not get rid of him for a reason, and is also speaking with Matt Eberflus on what to do moving forward. They see the potential in him, and also having Tevin Jenkins at right tackle. Do you know how hard it is for a lineman to relearn muscle memory for certain positions? Put Tevin Jenkins where he belongs, what he was drafted to do, and what made him such a big deal coming out of college, minus his back injury. But put them there, and that's going to be a good situation for the Bears. But also, in all seriousness, it shows that they believe in the potential of these guys, the relationship that they have with Justin Fields and David Montgomery so far, and how they are potentially saving draft picks to focus on different areas of need moving forward. So I'm excited about that, especially with everything that's going on with the offensive line, because it sounds like Lucas Patrick will be center for the Chicago Bears, who was the third best center in run blocking last season for the Green Bay Packers. And Cody Whitehair will play guard again. I love Whitehair. I think he's a great veteran. He's been with some bad offensive lines, been with some better offensive lines, but I think he is a good leader for this crew. And that means that a guard position is open. I don't see Dakota Dozer taking over it, to be honest, guys. He's been spotted running with the ones every now and then over the last couple of days. But stay tuned for our mock draft tomorrow, because I am picking up our next left guard, or left or right guard, whatever guard that's going to be. But I picked him up in the second round, so stay tuned for that. And then finally, what the thumbnail is here for, Deebo Samuel. Thank you for sticking with me through the explanation of the Chicago Bears training camp so far. But news broke not too long ago, earlier today, April 20th, 2022, for all those celebrating the day of the year. Enjoy. But anyway, and no, you are not having too much fun early and thinking of things. Deebo Samuel has requested a trade to be traded out of San Francisco to a different team. There were hints last night of Deebo's brother, posting all over Facebook, like, oh, we've already requested a trade here, this and that. Well, it became official today. And why is one spot very serious? Because that spot that he mentioned was the Chicago Bears. Would this work in a perfect world? Absolutely. Would work, even in reality now. Will it happen? I don't know. I am just going to say, I don't know. Not saying a no, not saying a yes, not saying a maybe. I'm saying I don't know, because there's so many factors that come into this. For those who don't know who Deebo Samuel is, let me break him down a little bit for you guys. 26 years old, fits Ryan Poles' needs. Young, 6 foot. All right, pretty tall, 215 pounds, athletic. Boom. That is Ryan Poles' dream receiver, minus, instead of being 6 foot. Ryan Poles wants a 6'4" guy in Christian Watson. Hint, stay tuned for the mock draft. But Deebo Samuel came onto the scene last year in the NFL, and he is a great utility guy for any team, especially could do well for the Chicago Bears. He was drafted by the 49ers in 2019 out of the second round with the 36th pick. Let me just break down his stats for receiving and rushing. He's a wide receiver, by the way. Just putting that out there. This is not a running back stats. This is a wide receiver stats. In 2021, as a wide receiver, he was targeted 121 times, 77 catches, 1,402 receiving yards, 18.2 yards per catch. 18.2 yards per catch, almost 2 first downs every single time on average he touched the ball. 6 touchdowns, 51 first downs out of his 77 catches. Just putting that out there, that's something that the Bears could definitely need. 2021 rushing, he had 59 rushes for 365 yards, which is 6.2 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, had more rushing touchdowns than receiving, and had 21 first downs as a running back. The dude is a machine. He's an absolute machine. He's a freak of nature in the NFL. He's still on a decent contract, but he's going to want the bag coming up next year. So that's one thing that something to consider. This dude is everything, again, that Ryan Poles wants, but the problem is we don't live in a perfect world. The Bears do not have the money to pull this off at least this year, or to use cash considerations for this year. And he's going to want the bag next year, which Ryan Poles wants to build this team for the draft. And obviously he's going to have to give up draft capital, potentially players, and it's going to chew up a lot of cap for years to come. That stings. But we live in reality. And I said, I don't know. So there's no certainty if he is coming to Chicago or not. But if we get him, King Poles, you did it. Absolutely. Bears have very significant chances of making the playoffs this year. And I'm excited for this Bears team if they get Deebo Samuel. I'm excited as a whole. This Bears team, I think, is going to be better than last year, even if they're only a win or two better. I think that they're still going to make a lot more noise and give a lot of promise for the future. So thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde. Stay tuned for more episodes moving forward. Go Bulls as they take on the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 2 in Milwaukee tonight. And stay tuned for more Chicago sports news. But with that, thank you very much for joining this episode, and we'll see you guys next time.